Lexi was 62, a retired school librarian with a gentle smile and a quiet, predictable routine. Every morning, she would sip her tea by the window, watching the birds flit between the trees, feeling content in the rhythm of her days. But one afternoon, something unusual happened. While reaching for a book on a high shelf, she felt a sharp, heavy pressure in her chest. It startled her, not just the discomfort itself, but the realization that she had never felt anything like it before. Her heart raced, and a wave of dizziness made her steady herself on the shelf, gripping it as though it could hold her steady against an invisible tide. That single, sudden moment was enough to shake her calm world and make her wonder, could something be wrong with her heart? The following days brought more subtle warnings. Lexi noticed she became short of breath walking up the stairs, a feat she had done effortlessly for decades. She found herself unusually tired in the afternoons, her legs heavy, her body protesting even minor exertion. At first, she tried to ignore it, blaming aging or lack of sleep, but a nagging feeling lingered. It was as though her own body was trying to whisper a message she wasn't listening to. When she finally visited her doctor, he looked at her with gentle concern, explaining that these could be signs of arteries beginning to narrow, silent, sneaky blockages that could turn dangerous if left unnoticed. That moment became a turning point in Lexi's life. She realized that her routine of quiet contentment had left little room for active care of her heart. No longer would she wait for a frightening symptom to force her hand. Slowly, she began to make small, deliberate changes, first in her diet. Colorful vegetables, fresh fruits, and wholesome grains replaced many of the processed snacks that had once been her comfort. She learned to savor meals not just for taste, but for their ability to nourish her heart and body. The shift wasn't just physical, it carried an emotional weight. Each mindful choice became a quiet declaration that she valued her life and wanted to stay vibrant for her family and herself. Exercise, too, became a gentle companion in her days. Walks in the morning sun replaced idle hours on the couch, and she discovered that moving her body eased the heaviness in her legs and gave her lungs room to breathe more freely. Lexi didn't push herself, she moved with care, listening to her body, learning its rhythms. And slowly, the anxious weight that had clung to her after that first chest pressure began to lift. Her heart, once a source of worry, started to feel like a friend she could nurture through choices, rather than a threat waiting to strike. Each step, each meal, each conscious breath was part of a journey, not one of perfection, but of steady, compassionate transformation. As Lexi's story unfolded, it became clear that she wasn't alone. Many of us, especially after 50, encounter these silent whispers from our bodies: fatigue, shortness of breath, unusual pains that we dismiss as ordinary. Yet, when listened to carefully, these subtle signals guide us toward change. Lexi's journey is a testament to paying attention, responding with care, and embracing small but meaningful steps that protect her heart, restore her energy, and give her the confidence to live fully. Today, her story is not just about avoiding danger, it's about reclaiming vitality, honoring her body, and understanding that the quiet signs our hearts give us are messages we can act on before it's too late. Lexi's mornings had always been predictable: quiet sips of tea, the rustle of pages, the occasional hum of a favorite tune. But lately, she noticed subtle changes she couldn't ignore. One chilly morning, while carrying a basket of laundry up the stairs, she felt a peculiar tightness in her chest. It wasn't severe, but enough to make her pause, leaning against the railing with her breath catching. Her mind raced. Am I just tired, or is this something more? She remembered the doctor's words from a checkup months ago about monitoring blood pressure and cholesterol, but she had shrugged them off, thinking she was still careful. Now, the reality of those warnings felt tangible, pressing on her like the weight of unseen hands. Later that week, while chatting with her neighbor, Mrs. Hahn, Lexi realized her energy was waning in ways she hadn't noticed before. Mrs. Hahn spoke about her morning walks and how she swore by adding a handful of walnuts to her breakfast each day. Lexi listened, intrigued, and mentally noted the simplicity of the suggestion. "Walnuts?" she repeated. "Just like that?" The neighbor nodded, a small smile on her face, emphasizing the importance of heart-healthy fats. Lexi didn't rush out to buy them immediately, but the idea lingered, planting a seed she hadn't expected. It wasn't just a tip, it felt like a subtle invitation to begin listening to her body. By the weekend, the signs became more insistent. Lexi noticed her hands trembling slightly when lifting cups of tea, and a mild fatigue settled in her legs after walking to the nearby market. Each small episode, though brief, was enough to unsettle her. At night, she lay awake, thinking about her life, the quiet years of reading, cooking, and tending to her small garden, and wondered whether she had taken her health for granted. She recalled her father's heart problems, the way they crept in silently until it was nearly too late. That memory, once distant, now pressed upon her with urgency. She realized that her own story didn't have to follow the same path if she paid attention early. That evening, Lexi decided to act, though cautiously. She prepared a simple meal, steamed vegetables, a small portion of salmon, and a sprinkling of walnuts over her salad. The act of choosing these foods was surprisingly empowering. Each bite seemed to whisper reassurance, a gentle reminder that small decisions could have profound consequences. Her mind felt lighter, as though the tension of uncertainty was partially relieved by these intentional choices. As she ate, she thought about the rhythm of her days, the quiet mornings, the books, the familiar streets, and how she could adjust them just slightly to honor her heart. It wasn't dramatic, but it felt real, tangible, and necessary. The next morning, Lexi awoke with a faint sense of hope. She began incorporating gentle stretches into her routine, inspired by an article she had skimmed the previous week on simple exercises that improve circulation for older adults. These stretches didn't exhaust her, but the movement awakened her body, sending warmth to limbs that had felt sluggish. It was as though her body responded gratefully to the attention, the small but deliberate care. Even her mind seemed sharper, noticing details in the garden she had never paid attention to, the subtle curve of a new leaf, the soft hum of bees. That morning, Lexi realized that change didn't have to be overwhelming. It could be quiet, gentle, yet profound. By the end of the week, she reflected on her progress with a mix of relief and curiosity. The subtle warnings that had scared her, the chest tightness, the fatigue, now felt like signals she could understand and respond to rather than ignore. Her body, she realized, had always been speaking. She had simply not listened closely enough. And as she prepared a cup of tea by the window, watching the first rays of morning light touch the garden, Lexi felt the first stirrings of a deeper commitment. She would continue this journey, one thoughtful step at a time, guided by the small truths her body revealed and the gentle nudges of knowledge shared by friends and doctors alike. Health fact included in this part: walnuts are rich in omega-3 fatty acids, which support heart health and improve circulation, especially important for adults over 60. Lexi woke the next morning with a quiet determination. The lingering tightness in her chest had not returned, but her mind was alert to the possibility that she needed to do more than just nibble on walnuts and stretch her limbs. She decided to take a walk, a slow one, around her neighborhood. The cool morning air brushed against her skin, and the distant laughter of children playing down the street reminded her of simpler times, of vitality she thought had slipped away. Step by step, she felt a subtle shift, a recognition that movement, even gentle, could awaken the body in ways she had long forgotten. During her walk, she passed by a small cafe and noticed a poster about a local health screening for seniors. A pang of anxiety tugged at her chest, but she also felt a quiet resolve. Maybe it was time to face the numbers she had avoided: blood pressure, cholesterol, and glucose readings. For the first time in years, she considered that knowledge could be comforting, even empowering instead of threatening. She promised herself she would register the following week, understanding that awareness was the first step toward change. Back at home, Lexi began experimenting with her meals in ways that felt creative rather than restrictive. She discovered the delight of colorful vegetables, roasted carrots that sweetened the air of her kitchen, tender green beans that snapped pleasantly under her teeth, and a sprinkling of seeds on her salad for texture and subtle flavor. Each meal was a small celebration of what her body could enjoy and benefit from. She felt a quiet joy in these choices, realizing that nutrition was not a punishment, but an invitation to nourish herself. Even her cat, Whiskers, seemed to appreciate the new aromas, curling more closely around her as she plated her food. Her family noticed the shift as well. Her daughter Mai, who had worried for months about Lexi's fading energy, remarked on her mother's brighter demeanor. "You seem lighter somehow, Mom," Mai said one afternoon as they watered the garden together. Lexi smiled, hesitant to explain that it was not just about energy, it was about listening, about tuning in to the subtle cues her body provided. She shared a simple secret with Mai. "I'm just paying attention, noticing the little things." Mai's eyes widened slightly, sensing that these small adjustments were part of something larger, a gentle transformation taking root quietly yet steadily. As the days passed, Lexi incorporated another subtle change: hydration. She noticed that drinking a glass of water upon waking and another before each meal helped her digestion and gave her a sense of ritual in the mornings. It became a grounding act, almost meditative. She realized that small, consistent habits could create profound ripples in her health and mindset. Each sip was a reminder that care for herself did not require drastic measures, only mindfulness and attention. One evening, after a week of these gentle routines, Lexi sat by her window and reflected on her journey. She realized that she had begun to reclaim control over her life, not through radical upheaval, but through deliberate, mindful adjustments. She felt a sense of pride that was soft and unassuming, yet deeply rooted. Her body, once signaling warning signs, was now responding with subtle warmth and resilience. She understood that transformation was a gradual process, one that required patience, observation, and gentle action. And with that understanding, she felt a growing sense of peace, a recognition that she was capable of navigating her health with intention and grace. Health fact included in this part: drinking water regularly supports kidney function, aids digestion, and helps prevent fatigue, which is especially important for adults over 60. A week later, Lexi woke to a subtle dizziness that made her pause in the doorway of her kitchen. She shook her head, hoping it was just fatigue or the result of last night's restless sleep. But as she sipped her morning tea, a light pressure behind her eyes made her uneasy. The thought of ignoring it crossed her mind, as it always had. "It'll pass," she told herself, but something deeper nudged her toward caution. She remembered the doctor's warning from months ago: ignoring subtle symptoms could be costly. With a deep breath, she reached for her phone and called Mai, her voice tinged with both concern and resolve. "I think I need to see the doctor today," she said quietly. The clinic waiting room was filled with soft murmurs, the shuffle of older feet, and the gentle beeping of medical equipment. Lexi sat nervously, feeling the weight of her choices in her chest. The nurse called her name, and she followed the corridor until she was greeted by Dr. Tran, a warm, middle-aged physician whose manner was both reassuring and direct. He asked her questions gently, listened intently, and conducted a thorough checkup. When he finally spoke, his expression was calm, but his words carried a weight that Lexi could not ignore. Her blood pressure had spiked, and her glucose levels were higher than she had realized. "These are signals, Lexi," he said softly. "Your body is asking for attention. The good news is we can work with this together." Lexi left the clinic with a mixture of relief and apprehension. The numbers were a wake-up call, a confirmation that the subtle shifts she had been making were important but not sufficient alone. At home, she sat by the window, contemplating the next steps. She realized that transformation was not linear. It came with setbacks, surprises, and moments that demanded deeper commitment. Determined, she reviewed her meals and routines, identifying areas where she could enhance her habits without feeling overwhelmed. She added more leafy greens, swapped refined carbs for whole grains, and embraced short bursts of movement throughout the day. The next challenge came unexpectedly during her weekly walk. A sudden ache in her knee made her pause on the path near the park, forcing her to sit on a nearby bench. As she massaged the joint, frustration bubbled briefly. Her body was reminding her that aging was real and progress required patience. A fellow walker, noticing her pause, offered a gentle smile and shared, "I had the same trouble last year. Small stretches and strengthening exercises made all the difference." Lexi took note, realizing that her community, her willingness to connect, could provide guidance as much as medical advice. She incorporated simple stretches into her mornings, mindful of her limits but persistent in her practice. By evening, she reflected on her journey with a mix of humility and determination. Lexi understood that health was a dialogue, not a declaration. It was about listening to her body, consulting experts, and embracing change gradually. Her daughter Mai noticed her renewed focus and offered gentle encouragement, preparing balanced meals alongside her. Lexi felt the power of shared effort and emotional support, the kind that transformed ordinary routines into meaningful, life-affirming acts. Evenings became a time for quiet reflection. She journaled her feelings, noting the triumphs of small victories and the lessons from setbacks. Each challenge, from dizziness to joint pain, became a marker of her commitment to self-care. Lexi recognized that facing difficulties head-on rather than ignoring them built a resilience that went beyond the physical. It nurtured patience, self-awareness, and a trust in the process of transformation. Slowly, she began to feel more aligned with her body, more confident in her capacity to respond to its signals, and more at peace with the aging journey. Health fact included in this part, regular checkups and monitoring blood pressure and glucose levels help detect early warning signs of cardiovascular and metabolic issues, which are crucial for adults over 60. The following morning, Lexi awoke with a quiet determination she hadn't felt in years. The dizziness and knee ache were still there, subtle reminders of her body's fragility, but she refused to let them define her day. After a light breakfast of oatmeal with fresh berries, she decided to take a different approach to her morning routine. Instead of rushing through chores, she paused to step outside, letting the sun warm her face and feeling the gentle morning breeze on her skin. It was a small act, but it carried an emotional weight she hadn't anticipated, a moment to ground herself before the day unfolded. While walking in her garden, Lexi remembered Dr. Tran's advice. Consistency mattered more than intensity. He had suggested a daily habit that seemed almost too simple to work: 15 minutes of mindful movement combined with deep, intentional breathing. Lexi decided to try it, starting with gentle stretches, then moving slowly through a sequence of light exercises that engaged her muscles without strain. She inhaled deeply, feeling the oxygen invigorate her body, and exhaled, letting tension melt from her shoulders. The rhythm of her breath and motion created a serene focus, a sense of being fully present in her own body for the first time in weeks. As days turned into a week, Lexi began noticing subtle yet remarkable changes. Her energy no longer dipped as dramatically in the afternoons, and the light dizziness seemed less frequent. Her knee, strengthened by careful movements, ached less and moved more freely. But the most profound change was emotional. She felt a quiet confidence blossoming, a sense that she could influence her well-being, not just react to it. This was more than physical. It was a mental and emotional awakening that reminded her of her agency and resilience. Her family noticed the change too. Mai commented on how Lexi's posture had straightened, and even her grandchildren remarked that she seemed more lively and present during their visits. Lexi realized that the habit wasn't just about exercise, it was about reclaiming her mornings, setting the tone for the entire day, and quietly signaling to her body that it was time to cooperate rather than resist. She shared the practice with Mai, who embraced it alongside her, creating moments of bonding and mutual encouragement. It was a shared journey, subtle yet powerful, fostering both physical and emotional health. By the end of the second week, Lexi could feel the deeper benefits. Her sleep was steadier, her mood lifted, and a lingering anxiety about her health began to fade. She journaled daily, noting her small triumphs and reflecting on the ease with which this simple habit integrated into her life. She no longer approached her mornings with dread or indifference. Instead, they became an intentional start, a ritual of self-care and empowerment. Lexi understood that transformation didn't always come from dramatic changes, but from consistent, meaningful routines that spoke directly to body and mind. One evening, as she prepared a light, colorful dinner, Lexi reflected on how far she had come. She realized that this practice had taught her patience, persistence, and the value of listening closely to her body's cues. It was no longer about fear or reactive measures. It was about proactive choices, small steps that compounded over time into tangible improvement. She felt proud, not of perfection, but of her commitment to herself, and of the gentle yet steady transformation that continued to unfold. Health fact included in this part: incorporating 15 to 20 minutes of mindful movement and deep breathing daily can improve circulation, reduce stress, and enhance joint flexibility for adults over 60. Lexi had always thought she ate well, plenty of fruits, vegetables, and lean protein, but after a routine checkup with Dr. Tran, she realized there were subtle deficiencies affecting her heart and circulation. Her cholesterol was slightly elevated, and her energy dips seemed more tied to what she ate than she had imagined. Dr. Tran gently explained that even small dietary tweaks could have a profound impact, especially after 60. He mentioned a particular combination of foods that many overlooked: antioxidant-rich berries, heart-healthy nuts, and seeds like flax and pumpkin. Lexi listened intently, the words planting a seed of hope and curiosity. That evening, Lexi went to the local market with Mai, scanning the produce for deep reds, purples, and vibrant greens. She felt a spark of excitement as she picked up fresh blueberries, blackberries, and a small bag of walnuts. On the way home, she thought about how food could be medicine, how these simple, natural ingredients might slowly rebuild her energy, her vitality, even her mood. For Lexi, cooking had always been a practical task, but now it became an act of care, an opportunity to nurture her body in ways she had underestimated for years. Over the next few weeks, Lexi experimented with recipes that combined these nutrient-rich foods. She sprinkled flax seeds over her morning yogurt, added walnuts to her salads, and enjoyed berry smoothies mid-afternoon. She noticed that her energy levels became more stable, and the occasional lightheadedness she experienced after lunch faded. More importantly, she felt a sense of agency, a recognition that small, deliberate choices could ripple through her body and mind. This awareness brought a new kind of joy. Cooking became meditative, eating became mindful, and meals were no longer just fuel but a form of self-respect. Her family noticed subtle changes too. Mai complimented her on how radiant she looked, and even her husband Tuan remarked on her newfound vitality and the lightness with which she moved through the house. Lexi began sharing her knowledge gently, preparing dishes that were delicious yet packed with nutrients, showing her family that health didn't have to feel like a restriction. Even the grandchildren began to enjoy the colorful berries and crunchy nuts, and mealtime turned into moments of connection and shared discovery. The emotional shift was as profound as the physical improvements. Lexi no longer dreaded meal planning or felt guilty for occasional indulgences. Instead, she approached her diet with curiosity, creativity, and gratitude. She realized that revitalizing her health wasn't about strict rules or fear-based restrictions. It was about cultivating habits that honored her body, supported her heart, and enhanced her overall well-being. Each bite was a reminder that she had the power to influence her vitality, one meal at a time. By the end of the first month, Lexi could feel a marked difference. Her heart felt stronger, her stamina increased, and she moved through her daily tasks with a new sense of ease. Nights became more restful, and mornings were greeted with energy and optimism. She kept a small notebook to track her progress, not obsessively, but as a gentle affirmation of the positive changes unfolding in her body. This dietary secret, simple as it seemed, became a cornerstone of her transformation, a tangible, daily action that reinforced her journey toward a healthier, more vibrant life. Health fact included in this part: incorporating antioxidant-rich berries, heart-healthy nuts, and seeds into daily meals can improve circulation, reduce cholesterol levels, and enhance overall cardiovascular health in adults over 60. Lexi had made remarkable progress with her diet, but she soon realized that true transformation went beyond what she ate. One rainy afternoon, while sipping her berry-infused tea, she felt a wave of loneliness creep in. Despite her physical improvements, there were moments when isolation seemed to shadow her joy. Dr. Tran had mentioned before that emotional well-being and social connection are just as vital as nutrition and exercise. And now Lexi felt the truth of his words pressing gently yet insistently. She remembered how her mother had always thrived in the company of friends, laughing over shared meals and exchanging stories late into the evening. Perhaps, Lexi thought, it was time to weave those threads of connection back into her own life. She began inviting her neighbors, friends, and even distant family over for small gatherings. At first, it was nerve-wracking. Lexi worried whether people would find her home welcoming, whether her conversation would flow naturally. But as the first guests arrived, she felt a spark of warmth she hadn't realized she'd missed. There were laughter and quiet moments, stories swapped over steaming plates, and the subtle joy of seeing others benefit from her home-cooked meals. Each interaction seemed to lighten a burden she hadn't noticed she was carrying: loneliness, anxiety, and self-doubt gradually giving way to belonging and purpose. These gatherings became weekly rituals. Lexi discovered the unexpected pleasure of cooking together with friends, trying new recipes, and sharing tips for better sleep, movement, and mindful living. The conversations often circled back to health, not in a didactic way, but as personal stories and shared experiences. Mai joined in, and together they created small health challenges: walking groups in the mornings, stretching sessions before dinner, even playful competitions to see who could come up with the most colorful, nutrient-packed dishes. For Lexi, these social moments became a living classroom where learning and laughter coexisted, reinforcing not only her habits, but her sense of joy and belonging. Emotionally, Lexi felt a shift that no nutrition plan or exercise regimen could have triggered alone. She noticed her anxiety about aging had softened. Where she had once felt uncertain about her body's limitations, she now embraced her strength and resilience. She realized that emotional support, shared laughter, and connection with others acted like an invisible balm, strengthening her heart and mind alike. Even her doctor noticed it. During her next checkup, Dr. Tran remarked on the remarkable stability in her blood pressure and stress markers, attributing part of it to the balance she had cultivated emotionally and socially. Lexi also began volunteering at a local senior center, sharing her experience and recipes with others who were struggling to maintain health and vitality. This act of giving deepened her sense of purpose and reinforced her own healthy habits. She observed how emotional fulfillment and social engagement worked hand in hand with diet, exercise, and mindfulness to create a sustainable lifestyle. The interplay of body, mind, and heart had become clear. Health was no longer compartmentalized, but a harmonious whole. By the end of this stage in her journey, Lexi felt a profound sense of integration. Her body thrived from nutritious foods, her mind was sharp and curious, and her heart was full from meaningful connections. The combination of emotional resilience and social engagement became the anchor for all her previous efforts, ensuring that the positive changes she had made would endure. She realized that while diet and movement were important, the foundation of lasting health was love, laughter, and shared human experience. Lexi's transformation was now complete, not just in body, but in spirit, grounded in the daily joys and connections that sustained her life. Health fact included in this part: emotional well-being and strong social connections can significantly improve cardiovascular health, reduce stress hormones, enhance immune function, and support cognitive health in older adults. Looking back on Lexi's journey, it's remarkable to see how far she has come. She began with uncertainty and fear, struggling with restless nights, low energy, and creeping anxiety about her health. Through small but consistent changes in her diet, she discovered the power of nutrient-rich foods, learning to nourish her body with meals that strengthened her heart, muscles, and mind. Along the way, she embraced gentle movement and mindfulness, slowly reclaiming energy she hadn't felt in years. But perhaps the most profound transformation came not just from what she ate or how she moved, but from reconnecting with herself and others. Lexi learned that social connection and emotional well-being were just as essential as physical health. By opening her home, sharing meals, and engaging with friends and family, she built a foundation of love, laughter, and purpose. Her anxiety softened, her joy deepened, and her life became richer, fuller, and more vibrant. Lexi's story is a gentle reminder that health is not about perfection or strict rules. It's about small, consistent choices and a willingness to nurture both body and heart. It shows us that even in our later years, it's never too late to make changes, to find strength, to embrace joy, and to reconnect with the people who matter most. If you take even one lesson from her journey, whether it's adding a nourishing food, taking a mindful walk, or reaching out to a friend, you are already taking a step toward a healthier, more vibrant life. And as Lexi now often reflects, the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the courage to start, the patience to continue, and the joy of living fully every single day.